Anyhow, Andrew here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Oilers. So let's get the housekeeping out of the way. World Championships is over. Canada lost out on the medals. Now, a lot of finger pointing going on from people. My theory is, well, first off, let's get the elephant in the room. Evan Bouchard didn't lose us the champ, and he wouldn't have won us the championship. He got injured, a concussion, and, it's always bad to see. I don't want to seem heartless, but keep your head up, buddy. That hit you could see coming a mile away if you paid attention. But the guy that did the hit definitely made contact to the jaw of Bouchard, which is a hit to the head. So it was a 5-minute major, and the guy got the game misconduct, and Bouchard was out for that game and then the 2 medal round games. So, it sucks. You never like seeing a player get injured, but it is what it is. If the guy had kept his arm down, or shoulder down, I guess, it would have been a perfectly clean hit. And chances are Bouchard still would have got laid out because he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings. And this has been an ongoing issue with Bouchard, is he doesn't pay attention to his surroundings. So, I'm not trying to pile on him, but there's a lot of people out there that are saying, well, if Evan Bouchard was playing, we would have won the gold. No, our defense played really well with Bouchard and without Bouchard. Now, could Bouchard have helped with a goal? Definitely. I mean, that's his forte. He's an offensive defenseman. So yes, if your premise is that he would have helped with a goal or scored a goal, okay, maybe there's something to that, but nobody knows for sure. So, Darnell Nurse had more points than him. So yeah, it was unfortunate. The other thing I want to mention while we're on the topic of Bouchard is I am not buying this pie in the sky theory that he was injured in the playoffs. If Evan Bouchard had a concussion in the playoffs, as a number of local media have tried to float, he would have never gone to the World Championships, and the World Championships would not have let him. They were not going to put a concussed player onto their roster and set themselves up for the lawsuits that would come from that if he got seriously injured. So, yeah, he wasn't injured in the playoffs. He just played crappy in the playoffs. He played really well in the World Championships against AHL level teams, because that's what we faced in the non-medal rounds was AHL level teams. So yeah, Evan Bouchard is a legitimate NHL offensive defenseman, and he, when playing like AHL or KHL or SEL or hell, even ECHL or junior players, he is going to feast on them. And that's what he did in the non-medal round, is he feasted on teams. He had a plus 11 rating because his defense play may not be good enough for the NHL, but it's damn good enough for the lower level tiers. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to get that one out of the way right off the bat. The reason I think Canada lost in the medal round is because we beat the Americans. And we've seen this before, we have a nasty habit of it being all or nothing when we play the Americans. And if we beat the Americans, we think it's over with. Well, newsflash, the tournament wasn't over with. Hell, beating the Americans got us into the medal rounds. It wasn't even a medal round game. So I think we hit the high point of the emotion that we beat the Americans, and then the team that came out in the next 2 games was a shell of itself. And that's what lost us at World Championships. Do I think we were good enough to win the gold? Yes. But we hit that emotional high, and then we came down on the next 2 games. That is my theory. If you think it's something else, come into the comments and let me know. But that's my theory. We got too piped too soon, and we paid the price for it. Simple as that. I don't think Norway or the Czechs or Denmark or the Swiss, I don't think any of them were good enough to beat Canada, except in that situation. So it sucks, but it is what it is. So, but overall, I think the guys had a pretty decent showing, except after the American game. Leading up to the American game and including the American game, our guys were playing phenomenal. So far above all the rest of the teams in that tournament. But as I said, we hit the emotional high and we backslid. And that's my theory on that. So anyway, next year, there'll be another one. This is the first time in 40 years that Canada has not won a medal in international play. Like, we didn't win in World Juniors. We didn't win in the Olympics. We didn't win in the World Championship. It's not been a good year for international play for the Hockey Canada. So But yeah, I completely reject that one player would have made a difference. I don't even think Sidney Crosby would have made a difference. If he was the one injured rather than Bouchard, I think it was, for lack of a better term, we blew our load beating the Americans. Just that simple. The NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup final starts tomorrow. I'm filming this on Monday, June 1st. And you'll see it on Wednesday, June 3rd. But on Tuesday, June 2nd is the first game of Vegas and Carolina. Now, I got no dog in the fight for either team. Once the Oilers were out, I was just honestly just cheering for ex-Oilers. So I'm just going to continue that and go Carolina, go. I would love to see Taylor Hall win a Stanley Cup and get the ring. And how ironic would it be if Taylor Hall gets a Stanley Cup ring before Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl? Like, the hardships he went through from that horrible trade by Chiarelli, and he still stands a chance now of getting a cup ring before Connor or Leon get it. You wouldn't have convinced me of that at the time, but seeing is believing, and we'll see. Also, I'm not a Mitch Marner fan. Never have been, never will be. So that kind of sours me on Vegas. Is what it is. I will say this about Mitch Marner. I don't blame him for wanting to get the hell out of Toronto. If I was him, especially after the carjacking at gunpoint, I would have wanted to get the hell out of Toronto too. And their fans, the Oiler fans, or a portion of the Oiler fans, drive me nuts. Well, the Toronto fans are even worse. So yeah, it's but I'm still not a fan of Mitch. So, but I saw today person posting on what do we need? How do you fix the Oilers? Well, if you look at Vegas and you look at Carolina, the answer is right in front of you. We need a coach, and hopefully we'll be getting a coach. I'll get to that topic in a second. That will play all four lines. Now, obviously, lines 1 and 2 are going to get more minutes, but it shouldn't be a team that plays lines 1 and 2 and then 3 and 4 get 5 or 6 minutes each. No, it's got to be closer than that. It's got to be more equal than that. Obviously, Connor's line and Leon's line are going to get more ice time, but your third and fourth line still need a hell of a lot more than Knobloch was ever willing to give them. Because you can argue that our third and fourth lines could never get into the games because Knobloch would never let them into the games. You look at Vegas, you look at Carolina, they play all four lines and they're in the Stanley Cup final for it. We lost to Florida. Florida plays all four lines. Florida beat us for the cup 2 years in a row. I keep saying that you can't win doing offense. Well, you also can't win if you try to play 6 players 90% of the time. They're going to wear out. They're going to get tired. They're going to get injured. That's what we saw this year. Besides the team being very average because Bowman and Knobloch they put together a horrible team. They did. Call a spade a spade. They put together a horrible team. But even that aside, it's like Connor and Leon play too much. Now, that's not their fault. That is the coach's fault, Knobloch. But on the flip side of things, you can't play your third and fourth lines if you don't have good third and fourth lines. And Bowman and Knobloch and Jackson, they absolutely scrapped our good third and fourth line players. Connor Brown, gone. Corey Perry, gone. Evander Kane, gone. Well, those 3 players would have made a mountain of difference. Instead, our third line at times was Ike Howard, Jack Rosovich, and Savoy, the midget line. I like Rosovich, but he's not a physical player. He's not a gritty player, and he is a small player. That line was not going to intimidate or build energy for anyone, and it didn't. It was a ludicrous line to put together, So I know what the Oilers need. I don't know how we get it. Because Bowman, in 1 year, has made such a mess of this franchise. I'm going to die on the sword saying Bowman should have been fired alongside him, Knobloch. He really should have been. Jackson, too. But is what it is. So, talking about the coaches. Craig Berube just did his interview with the Oilers. We haven't heard how it went or anything like that, and I don't expect we will, beyond the normal talking points of we had a good discussion, we gave him our vision, he gave us his vision, the generic answers that they're all trained to give. So we won't know anything probably until a coach is hired. And I don't expect a coach to get hired until after the playoffs, when theoretically we get to talk to Cassidy, but, we'll see, but at least they're doing something. At least the Oilers did the Berube. And, there's, the other question, the question I have is, what if we get none of the people we were looking at? Because there's a lot of teams looking for coaches this year. So it's very possible, like the Colorado Avalanche just fired Bednar. So they're going to be in on Cassidy. They're going to be in on Lafayette. They might even be in on Berube, though I can't really see that. But, they're going to be looking for an upgrade over what they just got rid of. So they're going to be an attractive team. There's a very good chance we may not get our number 1 or number 2 or our number 3 coach that we have listed. And what is the fallout from that? Because what do we do after that? It seems everybody's put in their eggs that we are going to get one of these 3 coaches. And they're refusing to even entertain the idea that it's very possible we get none of them. I think that's very short-sighted, poor management, but I wouldn't expect anything else from Jackson and Bowman at this stage. So it'll be an interesting once the playoffs are over. But yeah, I'm cheering for Carolina. I want to see Taylor Hall get that cup ring, and I want to see the Toxics in Edmonton eat it. I won't lie. I will take personal glee rubbing in that Taylor Hall got a Stanley Cup ring to all the people that have told me, oh, he wasn't liked in Edmonton. He was a cancer in Edmonton. Oh, it was all bullshit. Like all of their talking points have been completely disproven. So yeah, I don't care if Carolina wins. I don't care if Vegas wins, but go Hall, go. So that's why I'm cheering them. And the only other thing coming up is the draft, but we don't have a top pick again. So I don't know. It's with our draft history, if we don't have a first round draft pick, we don't usually have a player. And I find that unacceptable. Like so many teams out there hit all the time on second rounds and third rounds, and sometimes fourth and fifth rounds. We never seem to, which tells me we have a problem in our scouting. And it tells me we're putting too much emphasis on analytics and not enough emphasis on actually watching these kids play and figuring out, like, to me, you go back to the Nail Yakupov draft. I said, and this isn't revisionist history, I said all along I wanted to take Matt Dumba in that draft. That's who I wanted us to draft. I don't care who the consensus number 1 was. Matt Dumba was what we needed on this team at the time. He was available, and he would have been a great addition to the Oilers back then. But they went with Yakupov, and we know how that turned out. But yeah, we seem to have a real problem in Edmonton with scouting. And it's time for the Oiler organization to change it up. What they've been doing on the scouting front has not been working. So when something is not working, you change it up. So less analytics and more hands-on watching these kids play and highlighting what do we need. Like we should at least have a drafted goalie in our system at the very least. I'm not saying they would become the starter. I'm just saying we should have one of our own drafted goalies in our system. I don't think that's outrageous because usually goalies don't get picked until the 3rd, 4th, and later rounds. So why don't we? Why are we always relying on other teams' hand-me-downs for our goaltending position? And then it doesn't work. Campbell, Jari, I personally would say Ingram because Stuart Skinner had a better save percentage than Ingram had. I'll die on the grave saying that Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard were a better tandem than Ingram and Jari were. And Stuart and Pickard were, $4-5 million a season cheaper? But you can go back over history, when McTavish ran Dubnyk out of town, we went into goalie hell for years because he kept hiring, well, not him, because he only lasted the 1 season or so, but the organization kept signing free agent goalies and trading for free agent goalies, and none of them worked. None of them worked out. It wasn't until I think it was, we brought Talbot in is when it started to, or was it, maybe it was Mike Smith. We're going back a bit is the point, but we had Dubnyk who became an elite top 5 goalie in the league, and we gave him away for basically nothing yet again. And we had drafted Dubnyk. So yeah, I don't get it. It's, the Oilers need to relook at how they approach drafting and goalies, because there's no reason why we need to rely so heavily on the free agent pool and bad trades where we get the absolute crap kicked out of us, as we did with the Jari trade. There's no reason. Now, anyway, that's what's been going on this past week. So that covers it all. If you have any thoughts or comments, please come into the comments and let me know. But as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Takes 1 second to subscribe, costs you absolutely nothing, helps me immensely. Just hit the subscribe button on the bottom of the screen. If you're watching this on Instagram or Rumble, please follow my channels. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Not only does it get us interacting, it really does help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.